Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Injury Reserve project by the time I get to Phoenix. This is the latest project from Phoenix hip-hop outfit Injury Reserve, their second studio LP to date following up their self-titled in 2019, which was officially their debut, though it did come after years of fan-favorite mixtapes and the Drive It Like It's Stolen EP. I've been following Injury Reserve's rise since the release of early singles that preceded their Live from the Dentist breakout mixtape, and it's been exciting to see them progress artistically, but also disheartening to see their fun and forward-thinking approach to rap music fall on deaf ears within much of the industry. That self-titled definitely did make a dent, forcing many outlets to really pay attention to them with some more accessible tracks and bigger features, though personally I don't think it lived up to be their best work to date. Now, under normal conditions, any other group most likely would have built off the rapport and momentum set by that record with a new release, but the pandemic year, a darker world, and the untimely passing of key member Jordan Alexander Groggs has put Injury Reserve in an unforeseen position where the, future of the group is pretty much up in the air right now. But in an interview I had with remaining members Nathaniel Ritchie and Parker Corey, they said they finished much of the LP before all of this, and because of its dark and abstract direction, it still felt fitting to put out. And that's certainly what the singles teased toward as well. There was the heart-wrenching Knees, which brought these stark hits of guitars and drums, over which Ritchie brings this pained and ghostly vocal delivery that blurs the lines between the performance style of a rapper, an R&B artist, and a rock frontman. The track even blurs the boundaries of what is, I guess, a song, as there are moments here where Ritchie's lyrics and vocals feel less like a performance and more like an internal monologue wrapped in off-kilter rhythms, glitchy effects, and disorienting vocal samples. As a whole, though, the song feels like singing a very quiet song to yourself at a point where you are at your lowest, while also dealing with a pounding headache. Then there was also Superman That, which was even more disorienting in comparison, with its wild, frantic, glitchy rhythms that are still baffling to me at this point. In one breath, I feel like I'm listening to a more direct and pummeling version of something off of an Arca record, one of her more, deconstructed and glitch-oriented projects, while Ritchie's vocals in the midst of this chaos are giving off this ranting, raving, auto-tuned 808s and heartbreak, Kanye-level energy. The ending of the track is a little abrupt, but the ride up until that point is completely dizzying. Overwhelming too, but in the midst of all of this, Injury Reserve still manages to convey some very potent emotions. Like the song Knees, this track brings, I think, some really serious feelings of helplessness, or even impending doom. So with teaser tracks, with singles like these, I went into this album wondering, is every track going to be this, left field? And by the time I get to Phoenix is almost more out there than I anticipated it would be, to the point where I find some pockets of the record groundbreaking and a little difficult to define. So there's Outside, the intro track, which is a pretty mysterious beginning to the record and feels like I'm listening to a dystopian rap battle / spoken word piece. The stage is set with some sampled bars from New York battle rapper Dot. Then immediately after, Ritchie comes in rapping against that with his vocals pitched down, almost as if he is performing in response, but not literally. It's not like he's going at the guy or anything like that. I think this is sort of setting the stage on this track in order to illustrate these themes of division expressed throughout the song. It's a really immense intro to the record, and I think speaks to the direness of our current times. And I think speaks to the emotional heaviness of this record overall, as well, as it very much feels like I'm staring into a black hole that I'm slowly getting sucked into. SS San Francisco with Z Loopers is also a serious head scratcher. The instrumental on this one sounds like I'm listening to some depressive rockabilly, or maybe even some Tom Waits from the Bone Machine era, with its twangy and strange guitar leads and brooding bass. Meanwhile, the vocals Ritchie and Z Loopers throw on top are bringing cross-sections of psych and blues and experimental rock. Then the following rap verses that pop in are the epitome of abstract hip-hop, with allusions to just how dark the world is right now, but also with that train of thought being constantly interrupted with other musings and happenings and I guess, just things trailing off a little bit mentally. The song itself trails off a little bit in the end, but as I listen to it and also enjoy it, I do kind of wonder what is even the most reasonable way to end this. Because as I dig deeper into this record, not only does it feel like a lot of it is in reaction to the disarray of the world, but also the disarray of the self. The song Footwork in a Forest Fire starts off well enough with these dreary lo-fi guitar and drum loops. Grog's wild verse on the front end of this song is incredible. Feels like a more extreme take on the freakier directions Kanye was going in vocally on Yeezus. Though I do think the song begins to lose some steam in the second half, especially with that guitar loop and drum loop staling out a little bit. Truth be told, this is maybe the least dynamic instrumental on the record thus far. So as a result, I think Richie's performance on the song doesn't come off as refreshing as it should, though I do kind of like the way the song melts and disintegrates on the back end. It does bring some cool sound play to the table. And I have no doubt with the title in mind here, Injury Reserve was overtly referencing the highly publicized forest fires that have been raging across the planet and intensifying as a result of climate change. The song Ground Zero, philosophically in terms of its title, I think is very much pulling from a similar type of energy. Maybe it's not directly in reference to 9/11 or anything like that, but when we use terminology like Ground Zero, we're often talking about a location where something catastrophic happens. Instrumentally, the track brings these heavy, warped, descending tones, stuttering rhythms, a very low-key delivery from Richie as well. He kind of mutters his way through these somewhat violent and very materialistic bars. I do like the vibe and the sentiment of the song overall, how it fits into the record, but I do wish it had a stronger progression to it. Then Smoke Don't Clear is another moment where, oddly enough, I'm kind of reminded of Tom Waits once again, but like a totally different era, like the Real Gone era, with all these distorted, looped hip-hop influenced beats. Then there's also Richie's purposefully gravelly and very over-the-top delivery on it. Then with all the fuzzy textures and primal rhythms in the instrumental too, it's just another spot where Injury Reserve is just unabashedly throwing me for a loop. Then Top Picks for You once again pulls deeply from that 808s and Heartbreak era, but then goes a bit more abstract with it, with this strange, wintry, and vast soundscape. Then we have Richie on top of this, delivering this blend of rap and spoken word, with some haunting and ingenious reflections on death and existential patterns, likening the sequences that you might see in a life cycle to that of an internet algorithm, which honestly I think makes for one of the most apt moments conceptually on the entire project. I think Wild Wild West also expands on this project's themes of technology and apocalypse too, with Richie on this instrumental ranting madly about 5G towers. And bars like Willie Smith with the Inspector Gadget is more than just like a funny juxtaposition, as these things are brought up in reference to spying and intrusion. This may also work as a meta-commentary on the growing presence of conspiracies in popular and social media. Then Postpartum is another spot instrumentally that I get a lot out of. It feels like an experimental post-industrial take on the soulful, sweet, psychedelic sounds of Outkast. Aesthetically, I think it also sets the stage really well for the following track, Knees. And conceptually, I think this track is a hilarious way for Injury Reserve to kind of claim their influence, with Richie saying his and their artistic impact is, leading to them birthing dudes. Really going into that with a lot of passion and detail, and I think the extra level of hilarity with that on this track is everything Injury Reserve is pulling off on this record is just so far off from what like a trend-seeking or a desperate for attention artist would want to copycat, or even be able to copycat, honestly. Then we have the closing track, By Storm, which I think leaves the record off with a glimmer of hope in a way. The instrumental here is rooted in these really fuzzy driving bits of guitar and bass. In fact, it is a sample lift lifted from the closing track to one of my favorite Brian Eno records, Here Come the Warm Jets. On top of that, Richie is talking about, that old adage, when it rains, it pours, and it's really pouring. And given the global events of the past couple of years, and again, injury reserve losing a key member, I would say that is in fact the case. But as Richie states on this track, the show must go on, and even though things do look really dark, there is kind of like a willingness to continue and a hopefulness to the vibe here that I think is unignorable, even if it's not said as explicitly as it could be. So overall, I walked away from this record really blown away and impressed. This thing is a bold, inventive, and I think genre bending and blurring project. Really one of the first records in hip-hop since the release of like Death Grip's early stuff that to my ears feels like, this is like transcending the hip-hop genre a little bit, but also kind of just expanding it as well. I find it relatively refreshing that this record overall is a pretty compact listening experience, but by that same token, there are some ideas instrumentally and sonically I think could have been teased out, developed a little bit further, explored a bit deeper in terms of like length on a track or more variation within what has already been presented. There are moments when Phoenix, I think, is a bit too brief, but despite those very minor shortcomings, this record is the experimental, out there, abstract hip-hop release that I think everybody should be listening to this year, if that is a direction that you happen to find yourself going into at any point, because this is just great in my opinion. It totally blows their self-titled project out of the water and simultaneously feels so familiar, but also so different too. Feeling a strong 8 to a light 9 on this one. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Injury Reserve, forever.